carry on reviewing the Invisible Doctrine, so carrying on discussing this book. So during the era of social democracy, as I say, that's broadly from the 40s to the 70s, governments in the rich world treated growth as means to an end, leading to higher standards of welfare for everyone in the developed world. But neoliberalism treats growth as an end in itself, entirely divorced from utility. For example, which really is mirroring the production targets in communist China. As to feed neoliberalism, people must toil ever harder. Not toiling harder as a means to an end, as an end in itself. Previous generations of economists foresaw a time when so much wealth was generated that we would scarcely need to work. We have actually got to that point. We've reached that point. And yet, people are being expected to work ever longer hours, ever harder. For what? Because we've reached the point where people don't need to work that as hard as what they previously did. Growth has been used by successive governments as a substitute for distribution. If you just keep working harder, one day we'll generate the public services we need. We're told not yet, constantly. But, of course, this one day never materialises because it can't possibly materialise under neoliberalism. But meanwhile, we're squandering vast sums on corporate welfare and bailouts. The magic day will never arrive. That's the point. It's all lies. Well-funded public services were never part of a neoliberal plan. Ever. Because that would be contrary to what neoliberalism is all about. But to have us working ever longer hours on behalf of capital, that is part of the plan. Perhaps it's time we recognised prosperity is less to do with growth than distribution of power. When democracy prevails, the prosperity of society as a whole is enhanced. Neoliberal doctrines are sold to us as a means of enhancing freedom of choice, but in reality, it's about who dominates whom. If you're on benefits, of course, you'll realise, well, do you really have freedom? Do we have freedom if we're on benefits? Not really. It's very limited. So yeah, he talks about the crisis of democracy. The crisis of democracy is where ultimately the market decides, not the people, the market. Let the market decide. It's disguised as a host of power relations, as market is a euphemism for the power of money. It means those who have the most power in an economic system with the most money end up making the decisions. Political power is captured by economic power, and this sucks power out of people's votes. So we end up with a plutocracy, which is where the state is ruled by the wealthy. The outward structure of politics, elections, remain standing, but there's little political power behind the facade. Real power shifts to other forums, which is inaccessible to ordinary citizens. For example, meetings between government ministers and corporate lobbyists. Because voters demand restraints on economic power, democracy itself is seen as the problem. When a thick mesh of interactions that binds us to the state, for example, effective public services, laws that protect the weak as well as the strong, the sense of shared civic life, when these are stripped away, all that remains are the worst aspects of state power, coercion and oppression. The state itself, far from helping us, as it should do, becomes our enemy. History shows that when political choice is lacking and people see no prospect of relief, they become highly susceptible to the transfer of blame. And there are many techniques of distraction, for example, scapegoating, intense focus on issues that have little impact on general welfare, for example, unisex bathrooms. This opens the door to authoritarianism. People like Trump, strongmen who claim to advocate for the disenfranchised, but when in power, they further empower the rich. Fascism emerges where politics fails, where our needs can no longer be met through democratic process. What Hayek claimed to fear, the rise of the new totalitarianism, has been accelerated, ironically, by his own doctrine, neoliberalism. And then he talks about how words can be misused as well. For example, we talk about social security and a social safety net when we really mean economic security, an economic safety net. I thought that was very interesting. Because yes, that's really what we mean, and words can here conceal and confuse. So, yeah, economic security is what we should be talking about, to be more precise. While economic security should come from the government, social security should arise from the community. But conversely, neoliberalism argues that everyone is responsible for their own destiny, and if fall through the cracks, well, the fault is yours. The state has no responsibility for those in economic distress, says neoliberalism. And there's also no legitimate form of social organisation beyond the individual and the family, says neoliberalism. And this is very calculated, because together, people are powerful. Alone, they are powerless. So neoliberalism wants to make people feel powerless by saying it's all on you, by discouraging people from grouping together. It tries to atomise in order to disempower. This is what this is all about. As individual consumers, we can do almost nothing to change social outcomes, for example. Those who govern on behalf of the rich have an incentive to persuade us we are alone in struggle for survival, and any attempts to solve the problems collectively are said to be illegitimate, atomise and rule. Neoliberalism leads us to believe that relying on others is a sign of weakness. We should be self-made. Of course, no one is self-made, that's a myth. If wealth were an inevitable result of hard work, though, every woman in Africa would be a millionaire. They're not. Neoliberalism also encourages what is called the self-attribution fallacy, and this means crediting yourself with outcomes for which you are not responsible. You know, I'm wealthy because I worked hard, for example, ignoring all the help you got from family, from connections, you know, from inheritance, from where you live, all of that. The same also applies, though, to the belief in personal failure that assails many at bottom today. Oh, it's all my fault, because that's what you're led to believe. It's all your fault, you can't work. It's all your fault, it's character failing, it's all you, all down to you. Again, ignoring all the things that are outside of your control, which neoliberalism wants you to forget, because if you start focusing on all of those things, and if everyone did that, and if everyone realised if they came together, they could change the system. Yeah, that's what neoliberalism fears. So it has to encourage people to blame themselves individually, not the system. So yeah, we are set apart and we suffer, basically. Okay, so I'm going to stop now because there's still quite a lot to get through, and I will come back to this as soon as I can. So do let me know what you think, and thank you for watching.